Hello, Latin geometry students. In this assignment, we're going to talk about the equation of a circle. And a circle, if you remember when we first talked about a circle, we talked about distance. All these points that are a certain distance from this point, like 10 feet over this way and 10 feet over this way, and some distance. It doesn't matter what that distance is. But that distance is what we call the radius. And all the points that are the same distance away are what make up a circle. So a circle isn't really about being round. It's about all sorts of things being the same distance away from something. So to talk about the equation of a circle, we got to talk about the distance formula. Back in Algebra 1, you'd have a problem like this. It would ask you to find the distance between 2 points, and we'd use this big, ugly-looking formula, the distance formula, to find that distance. And the way it would work is we'd number our points. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. We just start plugging them in the right spots. 3 is x2, -2 is x1, y from the second point is -8, y from the first point is 4, and we simplify this thing, and we'd get a number. And that would tell us how far apart those 2 points are. Well, for the circle, what it is we want to do this for all the points. We want to say, what's the distance between the center and all the other points? So for center, we're going to change the coordinates for the center, one of the x and y's, to the letters h and k. Because we use h and k when we talk about the center or focal point of something. And then for all the other points, well, they're x comma y. So we'll leave an x and y in there. So our formula is going to switch. Instead of having all these x's and y's, we're going to have an h and k, and then one x and one y. And for the distance, well, that's the radius. So that's going to turn into the letter r. So our formula looks like this. The radius is x minus one coordinate for the center and y minus the other coordinate for the center. Now, again, what we're going to do here is we're going to square both sides so we get rid of that square root. So the radius is going to end up being squared, and we can get rid of that square root. This is what our formula for a circle looks like. It looks a little bit confusing, but it's actually really easy to work with. These 2 points, h and k, they represent the center of the circle. So if you have a circle that has a center at 5, 2, you'll plug in 5 and 2 for h and k. And the radius, oh, and I forgot to mention this. You'll notice that h and k become negative. If they're positive in the circle, they'll be negative in the equation, and vice versa. If one of them is negative in the graph or in the description of the circle, they become positive in the equation. We'll talk about that in a second. The radius is over here on the end, and notice that in our formula that it is squared. Okay, it looks overly confusing, but it's actually really simple. So here are 2 problems. I'm going to do the problem on the left and ask you to do the problem on the right. So step 1, we're going to find the center of the circle. And in my case here, the center of the circle is -2, 6. Find the center for your circle. Step 2, find the radius. All you got to do to find the radius here is count how far the center is from one of the sides, one of those other points on the graph. So I just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my radius. Count and find the radius for your circle. Once we know that, we're going to have our equation. And our equation, I like to do this leaving it blank like this, knowing that I'm going to put the coordinates for the center of the circle, h and k, that's going to be -2 and 6 here, and the radius over here where it's going to get squared. So all we have to do, once we know the center and the radius, is plug them into this formula. So our equation, it's going to be x minus, what's the x coordinate for the center? It's -2. So we'll put x minus -2 here. That's a double negative. It's going to become a plus later. The y coordinate of the center, it's y minus, what's the y coordinate? It's 6. So we're going to put a 6 here. And at the end, this number is supposed to be the radius. What number goes in for the radius in my problem? It's going to be 5. So then all we got to do is clean this up. About half the problems, you'll end up with a double negative in here, so we're going to change that to a plus, and 5 squared is going to be 25. So that is the formula for the equation of this circle. Again, you'll notice a couple things. The -2 for the center of the circle became +2 in the equation, and likewise, the +6 in the graph became -6 in the equation. They always change signs. And then the other thing you'll notice is that our radius is squared. Take a minute. Find the equation for the circle on the right. Okay, first thing you want to do is find the center. The center of that circle is at 3, -5. The radius of that circle, count from the center to one of the edges. That distance is 4. All right, we write a blank equation. We're going to put h, k, and r into the right spots. For h, we put the x coordinate of the center of the circle. That's going to be 3, so it'll be x minus 3. For k, we're going to put the y coordinate for the center. It's a -5. That'll become a double negative. Will become a plus later. And for the radius, we're going to plug in 4. Then all we got to do is simplify this a little bit. The double negative will become a plus, and the 4 squared will become 16. And that's the equation of the circle. So here's another sample problem. Here's the equation of the circle up on top. And the problem, we're going to find the equation for the center, for a circle with a center at 5, -7, and a radius of 12. So all you got to do is plug these numbers into the right spots into that formula. If you need to rewind and look at the example problem, do that. Okay, in this case, we're going to have x minus 5, and then it'll become y plus 7, because we'll have y minus -7. The double negative becomes a plus. And in the end, we're going to put 12 squared, or 144. That's it. Okay, sometimes you're going to be asked to graph a circle. Here, we're going to graph a circle with a center at 4, 2, and a radius of 5. These are really easy. Start by finding the center of the circle. The center is 4, 2. We're going to put a point at 4, 2. Now, the radius is 5. That means I'm going to count 5 units in a couple different directions so I can sketch the circle. So I'm going to count 5 units to the right and put a point here. From the center, I'll count 5 units up, put a point there, 5 units left, 5 units down. Those points are all in the circle, and then we just do our best to kind of sketch a circle in going through those points. All right. Now, here's a weird problem if we had to graph a circle like this. Now, the equation looks like x minus h and the y minus k, but in this equation, we don't have those things. You'll notice that x minus h, it now just says x squared. What do we do if there's nothing there for h and k? Well, we're not subtracting anything, and subtracting nothing is like subtracting 0. So in this case, h is 0, so the x-coordinate for the center of the circle is 0. Likewise, since there's nothing being subtracted from y, the y-coordinate for the center of the circle is 0. Now, the radius is supposed to be squared. Here it says 36. That's not the radius. The radius isn't 36. We'll have to take the square root of 36 to find the radius. If you do that right, you get a radius of 6. So this is supposed to be a circle with a center at 0, 0, and a radius of 6. So if you were to graph that, you start at 0, 0, count 6 units, up, down, left, and right, and sketch in a circle. Okay, next problem. We're going to write the equation of circle centered at -5, 4 with a radius of 9. We should have the equation of our circle here. There it is. All right, so all we're going to do is plug the numbers in the right spots and see if you get the right equation for that circle. All right, here's our blank equation. We're going to start plugging numbers in. -5 goes here. So when we have a -5, that's going to turn into a +5, so it's x plus 5 squared. We're going to plug 4 in for k right here. And then we'll have 9 squared on the end, which can be left as 9 squared or turned into 81. Both are considered correct.